The Man I Could Not Recognize. Written by Daintyjha. For DigiCafé, DaintyStories. Date written, June 26, 2026. Chapter 3. The Woman Who Forgot Faces. Part 1. Elara Vale had learned that a face could be a dangerous thing to trust. Before the accident, faces had been simple. Her mother's smile meant comfort. Her father's frown meant worry. Adrian's gaze meant love. At least, that was what she had believed. Now faces were no longer promises. They were arrangements of eyes, noses, mouths, and shadows that changed the moment she looked away. They belonged to everyone and no one. A stranger could look familiar. A loved one could become unknown. So Elara stopped trusting faces. She trusted voices. She trusted footsteps. She trusted the way people handled silence. My mother filled silence with nervous humming. Her father cleared his throat before saying something emotional. Mimira, her oldest friend, always pretended to be casual, and she was about to interfere in Elara's life. And Adrian. Elara closed the thought before it fully formed. Adrian had once knocked twice before entering any room. Knock, knock. For months after he left, that sound had haunted her. A neighbor's hand against a door. A delivery man tapping on glass. Someone testing a microphone before a meeting. 2 knocks, and her body would remember him before her heart could defend itself. Now, 2 years later, Elara refused to flinch. She stood in the staff corridor of Aurelia Grand Copenhagen, holding her damaged folder against her chest, and forced herself to breathe normally. In, out, again. The man outside had startled her. Not because he was tall. Not because his coat looked expensive enough to pay 3 months of her rent. Not because he had the kind of voice that seemed trained to make people listen. He had startled her because everyone around him had gone still. That was always the first clue. People revealed importance with their bodies. A room changed around certain people. Voices lowered. Postures straightened. Hands became careful. The man near the service entrance had caused that change without doing anything. That meant he was either powerful, dangerous, or both. Elara disliked both categories. "You are late," Myra said. Elara turned toward the voice. Myra stood several steps away, her heels clicking impatiently against the polished floor. Elara recognized her by the rhythm first, then by the scent of citrus perfume and the bracelet that jingled whenever she moved her wrist. "I know. You said you would be early." "I was early." Myra glanced at the folder. "Then why do you look like you fought a printer and lost?" "I collided with a man." Myra's silence changed texture. That was another skill Elara had developed after the accident. She could hear meaning before people spoke. "What man?" Myra asked. "A rude one. That does not narrow it down. This is a luxury hotel." Elara adjusted the papers in her folder. Tall, dark coat, expensive watch, voice like he was used to ending conversations. Myra made a strange choking sound. Elara frowned. "What? Please tell me you did not insult him." "I did not insult him." Myra exhaled. "I told him he was standing in a doorway dressed like a funeral announcement." "Elara." "He was." Myra grabbed her arm and pulled her farther down the corridor. "Do you know who that was?" "No." "Elara." I said no. "That was Ronan Hale." The name landed, but not with recognition. Elara had heard it before. Of course. Everyone in hospitality had. The Hale family owned the Aurelia Collection, a luxury empire with hotels, resorts, cruises, and private residences across Europe and beyond. Their name appeared in business journals, tourism reports, and glossy magazines that pretended wealth was the same as taste. Ronan Hale was the heir, the impossible man, the cold genius, the one people either admired, feared, or wanted to marry. Elara looked back toward the service entrance. The man was gone. "Oh," she said. Myra stared at her. "That is all? What else should I say?" "You asked Ronan Hale if he worked here. He was near a service door. He owns the service door. Technically, his family owns it." Myra closed her eyes. "That is not better." Elara should have felt embarrassed. Maybe she did, somewhere underneath the practiced calm. But embarrassment required a belief that she should have known better. and Elara had spent 2 years learning that she could not afford to punish herself for not recognizing what her brain refused to hold. Faces were not facts for her anymore. Names were safer. Voices were safer. Behavior was safest of all. And Ronan Hale's behavior had been interesting. He had not corrected her immediately. He had not announced himself. He had not seemed offended in the way powerful men often were when denied worship. He had watched her, closely, as if her ignorance was not an insult, but a gift. "Elara," Mira said carefully, "you need this audit to go well. I know. Your consulting contract is temporary. I know. And Aurelia is not just any client. I know that too." Mira softened. "I am not saying you cannot do this." Elara smiled without humor. "That means you are about to say something that sounds exactly like that. I am saying you have worked hard to let one awkward meeting ruin your chance. Chance. The word tightened something inside Elara. People loved giving names to survival that made it sound generous. Chance, opportunity, fresh start. As if she had not crawled toward every version of herself she now possessed. After Adrian left, Elara had not returned to life. She had rebuilt it from pieces no one else wanted to touch. She had learned to label people in her phone with details instead of faces. Mira, citrus perfume, fast heels, silver bracelet, dad, cedarwood, soft throat clear, left knee limp, mom, lavender soap, humming when anxious. She had created voice notes after meetings, writing down who spoke sharply, who interrupted, who lied with confidence, who apologized only when watched. She had failed, often. She had greeted strangers warmly and ignored people who knew her. She had mistaken a client for a courier. She had once spent 15 minutes speaking to a woman in a cafe because the woman wore the same red scarf as her mother. Afterward, she had locked herself in a restroom and cried so silently that even she barely heard it. But she did not stop. That had become her one private pride. Elara Vale did not stop. "I will not ruin it," she said. Myra studied her. "Good. Unless Ronan Hale stands on more of my notes. Please do not make jokes near him. I was not planning to. You joke when you are defensive. I also joke when people act like rich men are natural disasters. Elara, I will behave." Mira did not look convinced. The audit briefing was held in a conference room with glass walls and a view of the inner courtyard. Everything inside the room had been designed to soothe wealthy people into agreement. Soft lighting, fresh flowers, water served in slim glass bottles, chairs comfortable enough to imply respect, but not so comfortable that anyone forgot they were there to work. Elara took the seat nearest the wall, always near the wall. It allowed her to track movement without having people pass behind her. Her occupational therapist had suggested it, after Elara admitted crowded rooms made her feel hunted. Not because anyone was chasing her, because everyone could become unknown at once. There were 6 people in the room. Mira sat to her left. Aurelia, as operations director, introduced himself with a careful tone. Henrik Madsen, deep voice, slight whistle on the letter S. Wedding ring he kept turning with his thumb. A guest relations manager named Lynn spoke quickly and tapped her pen against her notebook. 2 junior analysts sat across the table, nervous enough that their laptops shook when they typed. And at the head of the room, 1 chair remained empty. Elara looked at it once, then looked away. She did not need to ask. Power always left a space for itself before arriving. Henrik began the briefing. "We appreciate your team joining us on short notice. As you know, Aurelia is preparing to redesign its guest experience framework across several properties. We are looking for insight that is practical, discreet, and aligned with our brand values." Her brand values. Elara wrote the phrase down, then underlined it once. Luxury language often hid ordinary fear. Brand values meant, do not embarrass us. Discreet meant, do not tell the truth too loudly. Practical meant, do not suggest anything that makes powerful people uncomfortable. Mira nudged her lightly beneath the table. Elara stopped underlining. Henrik continued. "You will observe guest-facing operations, review service flow, interview selected staff, and provide recommendations by the end of the week." The door opened. Every voice in the room changed. Not loudly, Not obviously. But Elara felt it. Henrik stopped speaking halfway through a sentence. The junior analyst sat straighter. Lynn's pen went still. Myra inhaled through her nose. Elara kept her eyes on her notebook. Footsteps entered. Measured. Unhurried. Expensive shoes against quiet flooring. Then the voice from the service entrance said, "Please continue, Ronan Hale." Elara did not look up immediately. She finished writing the word continue in the margin of her notes. Only then did she raise her head. He stood at the front of the room. Same height. Same dark coat removed now to reveal a charcoal suit. Same silver watch. Same posture, controlled to the point of arrogance. His face, as expected, gave her nothing useful. But his voice did. Low. Cool. Precise. A voice that never needed to rise because people were already listening. Henrik recovered quickly. "Mr. Hale, we were just reviewing the audit structure." "So I heard." Ronan took the empty seat without asking anyone to adjust for him. No one seemed to mind. Or if they did, they were wise enough to hide it. His attention moved around the room. Elara knew the moment it reached her. She felt it like pressure. "Elara Vale," he said. Mira's foot touched hers beneath the table. A warning. Elara met his gaze politely. "Mr. Hale, you found the room?" "I followed the signs. And no one was standing on your notes this time." A terrible silence fell. The junior analyst across from her froze with his fingers above the keyboard. Myra looked as if she wanted to disappear into the floor. Elara set down her pen. "No," she said. "So far, the room has been very professional." For one brief second, something shifted in Ronan's expression. Again, she could not read the face, but she heard it in his breathing. Amusement. Tiny. Controlled. Almost hidden. Henrik laughed too late and too loudly. "Yes, well, shall we continue?" "Please," Ronan said. But his attention remained on Elara a moment longer. That irritated her. Not because he looked at her. People looked at her all the time after they learned about her condition. Their curiosity had weight. Some tried to disguise it as concern. Others stared openly, as if blindness of any kind should be visible from the outside. Ronan's gaze was different. He was not looking at her like something broken. He was looking at her like something unexpected. Elara was not sure that was better. The briefing continued. Henrik spoke about service objectives. Lynn described guest complaints. Mira presented initial observations from previous research. Elara listened. Really listened. She heard tension when Henrik mentioned executive expectations. She heard defensiveness when Lynn discussed negative reviews. She heard exhaustion beneath the polished language everyone used to describe staff performance. When it was her turn, she opened her folder and removed the page with Ronan's footprint still faintly marked across the corner. Mira saw it and closed her eyes. Elara stood. "The issue with Aurelia's current guest experience model is not lack of luxury," she said. "It is lack of emotional memory." No one interrupted. "Good," she continued. "Guests remember being impressed. They do not always remember being understood. There is a difference." Ronan leaned back slightly. Elara kept her attention on the room as a whole, not on him. "Your staff are trained to anticipate preferences, but mostly at surface level. Drink choices, pillow types, room temperature, celebration dates. These things matter, but they are easy to imitate. Competitors can copy them." Henrik's ring turned once around his finger. Elara noticed. "What cannot be copied as easily," she said, "is the feeling that someone noticed what the guest did not say." Lynn's pen moved again. Elara took that as permission to sharpen the blade.